Hi, it's Mark Bossert here with Bernie Pawlik Automotive podcast and video series. And of course, we're talking cars. How are you doing this morning, Bernie?
Doing very well.
So we're kind of excited. We just found out we're the #1 automotive podcast in Canada and a few other countries around the world. And we want to thank everyone for listening. And of course, today we're talking about a 2010 Mercedes ML350 3-liter diesel, something we've certainly spoken about before. What was happening with this ML350, Bernie?
So the owner of this vehicle brought it in for some oil leaks. She was noticing some drips in her driveway of oil and was concerned about it.
What did you find?
Well, we found some oil leaking. Our procedure with finding the oil leaks was to remove Mercedes there's covers on the top, there's covers on the bottom. So we remove the covers on the top of the engine, remove the covers underneath the vehicle to assess where the oil was coming from. And most of the oil, actually fortunate for the customer this time, most of the oil leaks were coming from the front of the engine. And these are usually less expensive leaks to repair than when they're coming from the rear of the engine. And I'll explain a little detail more in a minute, but let's just have a look at some pictures right now. So there's our 2010 ML350, and all that white stuff you see, it was actually, took this picture yesterday. We did the service yesterday. That's actually snow in March in Vancouver. So kind of unusual, but there it is.
People were freaking out everywhere.
Yeah, exactly. Well, we're kind of getting used to it. It's been weird. Like February, it snowed a lot. And, I don't know, maybe we're getting used to it. But yeah, people do tend to freak out a bit. Anyways, let's get to some pictures. So we found the oil leaking from two spots. First spot, this is the oil filter housing, and there's a seal in behind this area. This is kind of, you can see pulleys. This is sort of looking down the front of the engine, and there's oil leakage down in this area here. This is one of the more common leaks from the front of the engine. There's also the other leak that we found was from the power brake booster vacuum pump. So this is located on the right valve cover. The actual oil filter adapter is sort of located on the left front of the engine. But the yellow arrow points to the actual booster, and the right arrow points to the oil leakage. Again, it's a little hard to see. It's not a huge leak in terms of tons of fresh oil coming down, but underneath it was definitely more obvious as to where the leaks were coming from. But that's kind of basically where the leak was coming from. So in terms of repairs, what's involved? There's the oil filter adapter removed with the seal in place. This is the area where the leak occurs from. The seal basically gets hardened over time. And a good example of that, this is an example of the new gasket, and this is the old gasket. You can usually tell when a gasket's old and bad, where it had to be. We have these special picks. They're very hardened, very sharp little hardened picks, kind of like the thing a dentist would use to scale your teeth, only a little more rigid and a lot less expensive. Basically, I had to basically pick this gasket out, and of course, it came out in chunks, as you can see. And the other one is much thinner, but over time it squishes out and flattens out, and given 9 or 10 years, it'll probably look the same as this. But that's the new gasket. The other area issue that we repaired was the vacuum pump. This is the brake booster vacuum pump removed. There is a gasket between the pump and the cylinder head, which was seeping a bit, but the actual pump itself was actually leaking a fair bit too. So we replaced the pump, replaced the gasket, and that was it.
So you mentioned that these are, and we've done a few things about these 3-liter diesel engine with different problems. There's pretty common to have leaks on these engines. Is that right?
Yeah, oil leaks are one of the bigger issues that occur with these engines over time. There's probably, I'm thinking at least five common spots for oil leaks. We just covered 2 of them, the front of the engine. And these are the leaks you want to have if you have any oil leaks on a Mercedes 3-liter diesel. The most expensive one to repair is the engine oil cooler seal, which is the oil cooler. We've done podcasts on this, so you can find them somewhere, either on a Mercedes or Jeep 3-liter. They use the same engine. In the intake valley, the oil cooler is located right down at the bottom. There's seals that leak there. Also, the turbo stand gaskets will leak. which is a bit less work than the oil cooler seal. But when you do the oil cooler, you change the turbo stand at the same time. So usually you can kill two birds with one stone. But the other leak that does happen from time to time is the rear main crankshaft seal too. So again, that's a pretty involved leak. So, but oil cooler seals and turbo stand are probably the most common, and these are up there too. But fortunately for the owner of this vehicle, that's where the major oil was coming from, was from the front of the engine from these two leaks.
So as I mentioned a couple times, we've addressed these 3-liter Mercedes engines a few times. Is it because they're so problematic, or is it a maintenance issue?
Well, I mean, they are problematic. They're finicky. There's a lot of things that happen. I mean, we haven't talked about the intake actuator, or on Jeeps they call it a swirl valve motor. They have variable intake runners. There's an actuator system that causes problems. I mean, anything and everything can go wrong in these things. And actually, with the other unfortunate issue with this particular engine is when you start it up on this particular car, the timing chain had a rattle for a few seconds. So it's going to need a timing chain replacement. It actually already does need it. It's just a matter of whether the owner will choose to do it or not before something breaks. But I mean, there are a lot of problems that happen with these engines. And I think I've said it before, a lot of times it's because people don't really use them they don't really get them warm enough. They don't run them for long enough periods of time. And that's really where a diesel is best, is for long hauls. If Mark, I know you had a Volkswagen diesel. I mean, you're the kind of perfect person. You live in Langley. If you actually had a job in Vancouver where you drove down the highway every day to work and back, that'd be like the perfect use for that vehicle. But a lot of people don't. They just, hop in their car, they drive their kids to school 3 kilometers, go home, park the car, they drive to work, and the engine doesn't warm up properly. So it's really, really hard on it, and really not the best use for a diesel. But of course, you'll never be told that when you go to buy one. You'll just go, oh, great, it's got the best gas mileage, it's economical, I want to buy that. So that, to me, is where most of the problems lie with diesels. You need to run them, and you need to get them warm.
So diesel really isn't an around town runabout little vehicle kind of engine type.
It's not really, but it's interesting because, I mean, we do a lot of Volkswagen TDIs, and they seem to be pretty reliable in that area. So I think somehow they built them a little better. These engines definitely have more problems for that kind of running. And, I've seen these with really high kilometers where people do a lot of highway trips and drives, and they don't have the same problems. So the thing is, you're not going to go drive, you're not going to drive another 100 kilometers a day just for the hell of it. Either it suits your lifestyle or it doesn't. So I think the takeaway here is, before you buy a car like this, check out what your usage is. And if you're just going to be mostly a running around town thing, yeah, the 1,000 kilometers out of a tank, is a really attractive feature. But, if you just pay all that money back in repairs and breakdowns, it gets a little discouraging after a while,
better to go for a hybrid than.
Much better to go for a hybrid. And I say like a Japanese hybrid, because they've proven to be really reliable. I mean, there's Europeans that are coming out with hybrids. I don't know how reliable those are going to be. They're all still too new, but a Toyota Prius has proven itself to be extremely reliable. Definitely a worthwhile car. So.
Or a Highlander or Venza or whatever.
Highlander, Venza, yeah. There's whatever the Toyotas. I mean, to me, they're sort of number one for reliability. When things do go wrong, they can be exceptionally expensive, but it's very rare. Whereas on these engines, it's pretty predictable.
And of course, we've talked about replacing these engines as well, and that's a very expensive proposition.
Engines, yeah, they'll go. I mean, the emission equipment, things will plug up. So sometimes it can be a real snowball effect of things going wrong, and it's not hard to even be hit with a $10,000 repair bill, which is a lot of money. I mean, you can, as I said, with the gas motors, you don't tend to have the same problem. I mean, you can buy a lot of gas for $10,000, or even $5,000, where some of the other ones come in for some repairs. So, just check it out before you buy it. See if it suits your lifestyle. It might. The numbers might add up, and it might be worth your while.
So there you go. If you need service on your diesel, and you probably do, the guys to see in Vancouver are Pawlik Automotive. You can reach them at 604-327-7112 to book your appointment. You have to call ahead to book. They're busy, or check out the website, pawlikautomotive.com. There's many, many videos as well on YouTube, on our YouTube channel, Pawlik Auto Repair. And of course, you're listening to the #1 automotive podcast in Canada. And we thank you. We're also very proud to be #1 in quite a few other countries as well. So thank you for listening, and thank you, Bernie.
Thank you, Mark, and thank you for watching. We really appreciate it.